Just 72 hours. That is the exact amount of time it took for the nation's capital to completely abandon one of America's most powerful officials. Only 3 days ago, Attorney General Pam Bondi stood untouched as a fiercely loyal pillar in Donald Trump's inner circle. Just 72 hours. That is the exact amount of time it took for the nation's capital to completely abandon one of America's most powerful officials. Only 3 days ago, Attorney General Pam Bondi stood untouched as a fiercely loyal pillar in Donald Trump's inner circle. She was dedicated from day one, shielding him through countless inquiries and fighting by his side during some of the most vicious political clashes in recent memory. Trump himself once referred to her as one of the most loyal people he had ever encountered. But an event unfolded this week that flipped the script entirely. It started with a document drop. 184 pages were discreetly handed over to congressional investigators. Next came the public leak images of a colossal waterfront property in Palm Beach suddenly surfaced on the internet Wednesday morning. And this was not just a typical vacation home. It is a 1,400 square foot mega mansion situated right on the water, holding an estimated value of around $31 million. But that was merely the tip of the iceberg. Hidden deep within those legal filings were financial logs revealing something far more explosive. $4.7 million in wire transfers had moved from an overseas account directly into a corporation allegedly linked to Bondi herself. The catch: these transfers took place months after she had already been sworn in as the Attorney General of the United States. Within mere hours, the scandal engulfed Washington. Then, on Wednesday night at precisely 9:47 p.m. Eastern, President Trump made a move no one saw coming. Over the course of 11 minutes, he fired off 3 consecutive messages on Truth Social. They were in all caps, incredibly blunt, and impossible to misinterpret. While he did not explicitly type Bondi's name, every single person in Washington knew exactly who the target was. Looking into very serious allegations about people I trusted. Loyalty is everything, but so is accountability. And finally, nobody is above the standard. When the President of the United States uses that kind of language against a top official inside his own cabinet, it signals one undeniable reality: the ice is breaking underneath them. But here is the critical detail that mainstream headlines barely glossed over. The real scandal is not just about the massive house, and it is not just about the overseas cash. The absolute core of the crisis is what investigators flagged on page 47 of that dossier. Once you realize what is documented there, you will completely understand why this controversy is accelerating faster than any Washington scandal in recent memory. Let us dive into the specific page that has every investigator in D.C. reviewing this file on repeat. Page 47 of the document submitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this week uses incredibly precise language. According to this paperwork, Pam Bondi allegedly kept a controlling stake in a firm known as Coastal Meridian Holdings LLC via a Delaware-registered subsidiary. This directly contradicts what she told Congress during her confirmation hearings, where she stated she had completely divested from all external financial interests. To put it simply, Bondi assured lawmakers she had severed ties with the business, but this new evidence implies she never actually walked away. On its own, that discrepancy would be a career-ending crisis for any cabinet member. But the true bombshell drops further down in the paperwork, on page 89. That is where the wire transfer receipts are located. According to the records, a staggering $4.7 million shifted from a bank account located in Cyprus directly into Coastal Meridian Holdings between March and September of 2025. Stop and process that timeline for a moment. Those deposits occurred months after Bondi had successfully been confirmed as Attorney General. They happened well after she took an oath to operate as the top law enforcement officer in the country. Investigators analyzing the paperwork emphasize that this pattern is impossible to dismiss. In public testimony, she claimed zero foreign financial ties. In private records, active accounts were absorbing foreign capital, and these financial moves persisted while she was actively running the Dodge. Yet the rabbit hole goes even deeper. Tucked away in the appendix on page 112, investigators stumbled upon a revelation that sparked even louder alarm bells. They found a communication log detailing 37 distinct emails sent between Bondi's personal email account and executives from an entity known as Mediterranean Crown Development. That particular corporation is based in Dubai, and here is the exact detail that made legal scholars drop everything. Mediterranean Crown development is currently the subject of an active investigation by the Department of Justice regarding potential sanctions violations. Let me repeat that so it fully sinks in. The Attorney General of the United States was allegedly sending emails to the leadership of a company that her very own department was actively investigating. When legal analysts first laid eyes on this log, many assumed it was a clerical error, a botched filing, or a massive misinterpretation. But the digital communication log is undeniably present in the paperwork, 37 separate emails. As soon as that detail leaked into the DC ecosystem, Bondi's predicament shifted from deeply uncomfortable to an absolute catastrophe, because the subsequent piece of evidence investigators dug up makes this whole ordeal nearly impossible to justify. The filing then transitions from a murky ethics dilemma into an outright financial bombshell regarding the real estate. We are not talking about a modest getaway cabin or a subtle investment property obscured by paperwork. We are looking at a 1,400 square foot waterfront complex occupying one of the most exclusive and expensive blocks of land in Palm Beach, Florida. It features direct ocean access, an active private dock renovation, and carries a staggering estimated price tag of $31 million. Property records tethered to the probe reveal that the estate is not registered in Pam Bondi's personal name. Instead, the deed belongs to a corporate entity, and it happens to be the exact same corporate entity that investigators allege she continued to oversee, Coastal Meridian Holdings. Leaked photographs that surfaced on Wednesday morning displayed construction teams actively working on the grounds as recently as late February. Building permits were officially approved last August. This involves massive renovations, foundational structural shifts, luxury exterior enhancements, and premium landscaping. This is the exact type of overhaul that routinely costs millions of dollars. Naturally, investigators pivoted to the most pressing question: exactly who is funding all this? That is exactly where the financial breadcrumbs lead straight back to the foreign account we just discussed. A preliminary audit outlined on page 156 indicates that the renovation expenses were funneled through the exact same Cyprus-based account linked to the initial $4.7 million wire transfers. This unveils a massive supplementary crisis because Bondi's formal financial disclosure, which was submitted to the Office of Government Ethics, distinctly states she holds no property assets exceeding $5 million in value. However, the estate tied to this massive inquiry is valued at more than 6 times that figure, sitting at a cool $31 million. That omission alone would trigger intense federal scrutiny regarding mandatory disclosure laws for any high-ranking official. But within the halls of the Justice Department, an internal maneuver took place that casts an even darker shadow over the entire timeline. Back in November of 2025, a career prosecutor working inside the Dodge officially flagged the Mediterranean Crown investigation over an alarming potential conflict of interest. The prosecutor explicitly recommended that Bondi recuse herself from having any oversight. Regarding the case, that crucial recommendation was drafted into a formal internal memo, but that document never saw the light of day. Instead, according to the leaked filings, the prosecutor who drafted the warning was abruptly reassigned to a remote field office in Montana. The most suspicious part: the transfer occurred exactly 11 days after the memo was submitted. In the political theater of Washington, that specific sequence of events triggers immediate red flags. When a formal conflict warning vanishes into thin air, and the whistleblower is suddenly exiled to the other side of the country, everyone immediately demands to know who gave that order. While all of these details were being quietly dissected by investigators and reporters, a massive secondary sequence was unfolding behind closed doors, and when it finally spilled into the public eye on Wednesday night, it fundamentally altered the trajectory of the crisis, because President Donald Trump finally broke his silence. The second President Trump weighed in on Wednesday evening, the political pressure cooker in Washington skyrocketed instantly. At exactly 9:47 p.m. Eastern Time, Trump logged on to Truth Social and unleashed an all-caps declaration. It was brief, but it packed enough explosive force to rattle the entire political establishment, looking into very serious allegations about people I trusted. Exactly 11 minutes later, a follow-up post materialized. Loyalty is everything, but so is accountability. Then came the final blow. Nobody is above the standard. He absolutely refrained from using Pam Bondi's name. He did not need to. Every political operative in Washington recognized precisely who the target was. When the commander-in-chief openly broadcasts skepticism regarding a top member of his cabinet, it transcends a simple statement. It operates as a public eviction notice. Within moments, political journalists were aggressively hunting for official verification. White House spokespeople rigidly declined to offer direct comments. But behind the curtain, a highly strategic maneuver had already taken place. Earlier that exact same night, according to two insiders deeply familiar with the timeline, White House Chief of Staff Kevin Hartley had secretly slipped into the Department of Justice headquarters. He held a completely private meeting with Bondi that lasted exactly 23 minutes. There was no press allowed, no media cameras, and zero official statements released 23 minutes. Then, a mere hour after Trump's Truth Social tirade went viral, Deputy Attorney General Marcus Webb was spotted walking into the West Wing. That detail might seem insignificant unless you comprehend the strict hierarchy operating inside the Justice Department. Marcus Webb is the exact individual who assumes the role of acting Attorney General the moment Bondi steps down. All at once, the fragmented timeline snapped into absolute focus. First came the covert meeting, followed by the public digital reprimand, leading straight into the White House arrival of the designated successor. This was not a spontaneous rant from a frustrated executive. This was a highly choreographed exit strategy. Within an hour, 3 Republican senators who had previously stood by Bondi issued brand new press releases demanding absolute transparency and an exhaustive audit of the documents, in the language of DC politics. That translates to one specific concept: extreme political distancing. Concurrently, deep inside the Dodge, insiders started whispering to journalists that Bondi was actively assessing her options. In the realm of high-stakes Washington politics, that specific phrase carries heavy implications. It almost universally indicates that an official is hashing out the logistics of their resignation, because the moment a sitting president publicly interrogates a cabinet member's ethics, the countdown clock is officially activated. We are no longer talking about a timeline of weeks or days, but quite possibly hours, and according to a coalition of senior officials speaking off the record on Thursday morning, the countdown sequence for Pam Bondi has absolutely started. By the time Thursday morning rolled around, the atmosphere surrounding Bondi had mutated from a severe political headache into the undeniable preliminary phase of a total professional collapse. First, the formal probes were launched. The Department of Justice Inspector General formally initiated an audit regarding the financial disclosures linked to the leaked papers. Simultaneously, the Senate Judiciary Committee declared it would launch an independent dive into the filings and formally demanded supplemental documents directly from Bondi's team. Next, the White House initiated its own offensive. The Office of White House Counsel discreetly verified it had launched a parallel investigation into the controversy, with initial conclusions anticipated within mere days. When 3 distinct oversight mechanisms, internal Dodge, congressional review, and White House counsel, launched simultaneously in D.C., it signifies the crisis has officially breached the maximum threshold of political danger. But the subsequent revelation escalated the peril even further. On Thursday afternoon, numerous media outlets broke the news that Bondi had quietly consulted with a private criminal defense lawyer in Washington. She did not bring in a Justice Department attorney or an official government legal representative. She hired a specialized personal defense attorney, the legal counsel. In question is Victor Castellano, a highly respected former federal prosecutor renowned for defending elite white-collar clients. Whenever an active cabinet official retains private criminal counsel completely divorced from their governmental capacity, it sends a blaring signal that they are gearing up for a brutal legal war, rather than just a public relations skirmish. Amidst this chaos, Bondi's office pushed out a brief to paragraph press release. It offered zero comprehensive explanations and presented no factual counter-narrative to the 1/8-page document. It was simply a sanitized boilerplate message insisting the Attorney General remains absolutely confident that any objective investigation will prove total adherence to all ethical and statutory mandates in the hyper-scrutinized ecosystem of Washington. Generic statements of that nature almost never extinguish a fire. More often than not, they pour gasoline on it, primarily because the most critical questions remain glaringly unresolved. Who actually controlled the funds inside the Cyprus accounts? Who greenlit the transfer of millions of dollars flowing through Coastal Meridian Holdings? And exactly how did a colossal $31 million estate tied to that exact enterprise completely dodge the Attorney General's required financial disclosures? As of right now, Pam Bondi technically retains her title. There has been no formal resignation press conference, and zero criminal indictments have been filed. But the hourglass is emptying rapidly. Senate investigators have already locked in a strictly confidential, closed-door hearing for Monday. Bondi has been officially ordered to surrender the requested files by the end of Friday. If those materials do not materialize, legally binding subpoenas are expected to be issued immediately. Throughout the corridors of Washington, political strategists are all echoing the exact same sentiment. The narrative is no longer centered on whether Bondi will be forced out of her role, but rather the exact moment it happens. Because in the unforgiving arena of modern American politics, while some scandals take their time to simmer, others burn the entire house down overnight.